We are live. Hello, hello. Hello, everyone who is in the comments. Someone has found a button.
Well done,
Well
Stephen.
done.
Well done.
I don't know what button that is, but brilliant.
Excellent.
Hello, Lisa. He also says hello. And what was the other one he said? I hope you're all enjoying your day with a good book and a beverage of your choice, which is a lovely thing to say, I think. I mean, I have my beverage of choice. Pepsi Max, always.
I have water. Well, let's say it's water. Just because it's so hot.
It doesn't have to be. It's summer and it's 8 o'clock, so it's definitely well past 5. So it's completely fine.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
Hello, Harriet.
Hi, Harriet.
And obviously, hello, Stephen. Welcome to my channel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
you've graced it. Maybe I'll make you do it again. But who knows? Yes, Lisa. My drink is in the orange Starbucks cup. I did have this conversation yesterday in my live. It is a new cup, and it's now my entire personality. It's just this cup.
Okay. So. All right. Good stuff. Ahoy.
Hello. So the idea for today is obviously to ask the lovely Stephen questions about his newest release, which I have right next to me, which is the Judas Blossom, but also just to pick your brain. And I've got some questions from some people, and if anyone has anything that comes to mind during this live, feel free to just drop it in the comments and we will ask it and get to it and see what Stephen thinks.
And the best question will receive will receive a signed and personalized copy of the Judas Blossom early, because I got my author copies. I have a box here. I will sign it and I will post it in the next couple of days. So ask some good questions, and the one I say, that's really good, it goes on the list, and then we'll see how we do.
Yeah, and you can ask more than one question. Ask away. We're always interested. Yes, there is a new book coming out. Shall we start off with the new book? Obviously, the Judas Blossom. Tell us a little bit about it.
Okay. So I rather unwisely, perhaps, decided to do something very, very different again, and thought, historic fantasy, that sounds like fun. Anyway, I say that because 2 days ago, Tuesday, I was doing some writing, and I needed to get a person from point A to point B, and I just stopped, and an hour and a half later had the answer, because I had to do some research from how a person would get from point A to point B in the year 1263. So that slows me down. Whereas in fantasy, I just go wizard or horse or dragon ride. Yeah, let's say that. How long it take them? Couple of hours. Yeah, that'll do.
Nice.
Off you go. So a lot more research this time. Yes. So the new book, Judas Blossom, is the first in a new trilogy, and it's set in the 13th century. And the story starts in 1260, and it's set in Persia, which is now Iran since 1960. I think they changed their name, but it's I borrow a lot from history. All of the main events in the book happened. The order roughly happened in the same, but the timings are changed slightly, and who was there has changed slightly, only because to make it a more cohesive story, because otherwise it would be, then this war starts, and then 2 years later the war ends, and I'm like, right, so do I write a trilogy about the war for 2 years, or so I have to kind of move things. Some of the characters in the book are based upon real people, some of them are based on people I've completely made up, and some of the other stuff I've made up too that's kind of fantastic, and other things in there that I thought about one thing and thought, I wonder if this other thing could exist. Why not? And it kind of, weaving all of that together. So that was a massive challenge. Doing the research was a massive challenge. And now I'm very tired and very hot, and about halfway through writing book 3. So people who are waiting for the series to finish, don't. Book 2's done. It's written, goes into edits any day now. And by Christmas, I'll have written book 3. So wow. Yeah, there you go.
That's pretty interesting. Is that your, because I think it's a book a year, isn't it? So Judas Blossom is this year, book 2 will be 24, book 3 is 25.
That's it.
Did you plan that timeline, or is that down to your publisher? How
Publisher.
do you kind of get that timeline?
So with Angry Robot, I had written the first draft of the Judas Blossom already, and I gave it to them, and then we went into edits on that, and then did the contract with my agent, all that kind of stuff. And when it was coming out in the year, they told me, because it fits in with everything else that's on their list, so it has to fit.
Right.
Is that a good month? Is that not a good month for books coming out? What else is coming out? So that we decided on July for a nice summer release, and then it would be one book a year, which is kind of standard for me and for like a trilogy, because you don't want to have to wait too long between books. So once I knew that, I then knew I had so many months to write book 2, roughly a year, and so many months, about 12 months usually to write book 3. So and I've been able to stick to that since I started, really, all the way back to Battle Mage. So
wow, that's pretty impressive. I think if you gave me a deadline, actually, I know if you gave me a deadline, I'd write it a week before it was due. That's just
so you do your homework, is that what you're telling me?
Literally, my dissertation I worked on throughout the year of final year, like little bits, and then it got to like the final month, and I went, I need to finish this. It needs to go in. And then literally just sat with my laptop, and it was around Easter, so I sat there with my laptop and an Easter egg, and I just smashed it out. That was just
I'd have a nervous breakdown, I think, doing that.
If I was an author, I would be a pantser 1,000%. Like I can't.
I've tried it. It didn't work for me. I wrote a whole book pantsing it.
Yeah.
The whole thing. It was a sci-fi book. I didn't even send that one out in submission. It couldn't be salvaged. Wow. I just realized when I got to the end and looked at it and thought, well, maybe I can edit it and change it. No, it was just not. I was like, that's just in the bin. It's too far gone. And straight when I knew, okay, I know this is definitely not for me. This style does not work for me. I have to plan my books. I have to. So
well, everyone's to their own, and obviously it works because your books are great, and obviously biased opinion because I do love your books, obviously.
I work better with a deadline. I work better than I know. I have to do so many words a month, and then by the time of so many months, I've got a finished first draft, and I know then it goes into edits, and then this, and then that, and the cover, and all that kind of stuff. So I've got into the routine. I've got into a rhythm, and I've never missed a deadline. I've always been early or on time with deadlines. So it's
very commendable.
Works. Thanks. But so we worked this out the other day. I've had a book out every year since 2015, apart from 2020, which is the year that no one talks about because it was the thing that happened that changed the world.
That thing.
That thing.
That thing that is still impacting us now, which is
that thing. Yeah. So yes, but yes, a book every year since 2015.
Wow, that's impressive. And most of your series have been trilogies. Am I right in thinking that The Coward or The Quest of Heroes is the only duology you've written so far?
That's right. Yeah.
So
it was originally a trilogy, and then when talking through my agent, she went, "It's not a trilogy." And I'm like, "You're right, it's not a trilogy."
I will take that.
But talking it through.
But I think that's probably a bonus of being traditional, is that you do have more of that professional advice, someone to use as a soundboard to kind of get the idea and to have a better plan, thought process of what to expect and how to write your books. Otherwise you could end up with a trilogy that could have, like you said, been done in 2 books. It's
in the past I've had ideas for things, and I've spoken to my agent and said, I'm thinking of working on something in this kind of genre, and she sort of said, I'm like, well, what does that mean? And she said, now isn't a good time in the market for these reasons, blah blah blah. It might be the things change. She said, how far are you into the process? I'm like, I haven't even started writing it. She's like, yeah, well don't, shelve it, keep it in the background, and maybe come back to it. And the market may have changed, that now actually might be a better time, but we'll see. She might be like, yeah, it's not a good a time. But
that's true.
This is why it's, as you said, having that expert advice, having someone in the industry who knows what's going on, and I can say, is now a good time? What's happening? What's what are the trends? What should I be doing?
TikTok. TikTok is the trend. Are you on TikTok, Stephen?
Absolutely not. I'm way too old. I have way too many grey hairs. I don't understand. I barely understand Instagram. I can manage that. I can do Twitter. I think that's my limit. I can do YouTube, but
Yeah, I think YouTube is probably my favorite content because 9 times out of 10, especially like vlog content, I just sit, I natter away. I'm chaotic in myself. I don't know, maybe I am entertaining, maybe I'm not, I don't know. But I just do a rough edit and then out it goes, and people watch it for some reason, but you know.
That's what I say about my channel. People watch it for some reason.
Your channel is informative. Mine is just like, I don't know.
Yours is informative about your life.
Here's another hotel room.
Here's the book I'm reading. You know, people love BookTube. I love it. I watch BookTube. I watch BookTube channels to see what people are reading. I'm like, I've never heard of that. And I'm usually on the, know what's going on. I miss so much stuff now because there's too many books coming out. I'm just like, I've never heard of that. What's this one? So
yeah, I find that as well. Especially now that indie authors are taking off a lot as well. And not only is there a lot of like promotion for traditionally published books, indie authors are starting to realize that if they publicize themselves or reach out to reviewers or bloggers or whatever, that their book will get out there, and then now all of a sudden there's so many fantastic books that are both trad published and indie published, and I don't have the time to read everything.
No, and things like Mark Lawrence doing the SBFBO has changed, a lot of perception of particularly self-pubbed fantasy, indie pub, fantasy books. And people are just finding them, like I found books because of that, and some of them have now been picked up because they've been so popular and have gone on to be traditionally published, like whether it's Combat Codes or The Lost War by Justin Lee Anderson, or even though people who didn't win, they were finalists, have got picked up, like Senlin Ascends by Josiah Bancroft. I think he was like second or runner-up in the year that he was on SBFBO, and now he's had 4 books out with Orbit, and another series coming, and
I didn't even know he was originally indie published, but it seems to be quite common that Orbit seem to pick them up, because Orbit have done loads. Combat Codes and The Lost War that I'm aware of. Obviously, there's
Jonathan French, the Grey series.
I've got that as well. That's also Orbit.
So there's about 7 or 8 that Orbit have done now at this point. I think they're doing one every year. They must have, surely. So it's just opening the doors, and people are becoming more aware of indie books, and the quality now is so good compared to what it used to be.
It's come off Wattpad. Like, I remember reading that when I was a teenager, and it was all fan fiction, which, nothing against fan fiction, if that's what you like to learn. But it is a good way to learn. I mean, again, I'm not gonna write books because I'd never get it finished.
A lot of work. You cram it in the last month.
I'm fine with the work, but unless I'd need someone to give me the deadline, and then I could procrastinate up until a month and then finish it. So Harriet has asked, do you find it challenging coming up with story ideas and plot ideas? Obviously, you said that you're a planner, so I'm guessing do you pre-plan the whole series, or do you just pre-plan book by book? What's your process?
So to answer her question, coming up with story ideas and plot ideas isn't the difficulty, isn't a challenge. Ideas are easy, not just for me, like generally, I think coming up with ideas is easy. Coming up with a good idea that you can then turn into a good story is the challenge. There's this thing that Dean Koontz used to do famously. He's a pantser, right? He's written books for like 35, 40 years at this point. And what he would do is come up with an idea for something, like, a little nugget of an idea, and he'd get a bunch of cards and he'd just write it down and put it in his drawer. And every time he got an idea, he'd write a couple of lines down, or a note or a thing, and put it in his drawer. And when he finished one book, he'd get out the deck of cards and he'd go through and flick through ones to find something that, he'd previously thought, oh, that's quite interesting. But he's now going through them going, ooh, pick that up, puts it down, and he starts writing based upon that one. And it's that thing of, I don't work in that way, but I will have ideas for things whilst I'm working on the book, always, because the grass is always greener. Because when you're 6 months into a 12-month project and an idea goes, you can write this. This sounds brilliant. Like, yes, it does. But it's a trap. And I know it's a trap now. So what I do is go, you're right, brain, but you're also lying to me. So I then go write it down and go, and anytime the new bits of nuggets come up, I write it down, write it down, and get as much of it out of my head as I can. And when I finish the book, I'll then go back and look through those ideas in the same way that Dean Koontz did and go, is it still as good now compared to then? And sometimes it isn't. I look at it and go, yeah, you're just trying to drag me away from what I was doing because you knew it was a slog. And sometimes I go, ooh, that one, I still like the idea of that one. Oh, yeah. Well, I've been carrying some ideas around in my head for years. And I keep thinking, and I play around with them in spare moments, and I still want to work on them. So I know that they're good because they're still bugging me years after I've had them, and even after I've written them down. So to answer your question about coming up with the series, so when I knew I was doing this is a trilogy, the Nightingale and the Falcon, and it's a massively complicated part of the world and massively complicated part of history. So I knew that I had to kind of end cap it in some ways that would deviate from history. And it was, so when I started planning it, I knew the very beginning of the very first book, and I knew the end of the third book. That was done. And then once I'd written that first book that follows history fairly well, I then started thinking more about 2 and 3 and plotting the beats for that. So I've got the beats set out for 2 and for 3. And now I'm at the point where I'm basically joining the dots on the last kind of third of the book. I know what the final chapters are. Like I've got, this is so-and-so's final chapter, this is so-and-so's final chapter. It's done. And then it's the bit just before that that's got the flex in, and they're kind of, right, but what happens there? Oh, maybe this, maybe that. And I'm working towards that now. But I don't plan everything to the nth degree, because if I did, it would be boring for me to write, and then it'd be boring, I think, to read. So even though I'm a planner, I still have to leave some gaps for kind of creative jumps. And sometimes I write something and I go, what's that? I don't know. In the moment, I don't know. But it's on the page. And sometimes it ends up in the book and it comes in something cool. Sometimes it comes out because I'm like, that makes no sense. Get rid of it. And I just cut it out in the editing process. But at the moment, it sounded so cool.
Yeah.
50-50, whether it is.
It's quite interesting. Do you struggle? Because obviously the Judas Blossom is from multiple points of view.
Yes.
Do you ever struggle with writing multiple POVs and maybe being biased towards a certain character, or as you're going through the writing process, you become biased to a certain character? So you go, oh, I want to write more of this person, but I need to hear what everyone else is doing at the same time.
Yeah, I know some people that will write one character, just write their chapters, then go back and do the other one. But I'm thinking, if they've all got to work together and the story has to mesh together, I want people to enjoy all chapters. This thing is, you ask someone who is your favorite character in any book with multiple points of views, and you'll always get a different answer. I'm already getting that now. Someone will say, oh, Kokujin's my favorite character. Someone says, Temujin's my favorite character. I'm like, I can't win. So all I can try and do is try and make all of their stories as interesting as possible. But I have to get the balance right. Like if I get carried away by one character, sometimes I'm thinking, am I just writing this one because I'm enjoying it more? Is the balance off? Do I need to explore this thing more, this thing less? So it depends, but I try to keep it fairly rhythm. I've only ever done multiple POV stories. Books that were never published, I've done first person, but I've never done a traditional published novel first person. I've never done a single point of view book. It's not that I find it limiting, but with a book like this that's jumping across the world and in different countries, different parts, doing it from one point of view would be really limiting. So it had to be multiple points of view. It was always going to be. And so I could explore different facets of the world and the country and the society. And it's the same with Battle Mage. I did someone who was a battle mage, so they're kind of using all the magic. I did someone who's like a frontline soldier, so you get to see what they're getting up to in the middle of the war. I did someone who's like part of the planning stages, the politics, and the step away from the war, what happens, and that kind of thing. And it's just that thing of, if I'd just done it from one of those points of view, I don't have to tell you about what they've been told to explain some of the other stuff. I'm like, now I'm just telling you too much instead of showing you the stuff with the different characters. So
seeing, not telling.
Richard Swan did a thing about this recently, saying show don't tell's terrible advice. He's right and he's wrong. I think sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. So it really depends upon the author and their style. But
as a reader, I think you need a mix. There are some things that I don't need to see. I can just be told. Especially like in the first book of a series, if you're just told it rather than shown it, it saves a lot of like dumping. But then you also need to see rather than tell, because then you need to experience the world rather than just being bamboozled with all this information from a fantasy world.
It's true, but my books are all fairly lean. I haven't written a book that's gone over 500 pages, maybe. I've never got like 600. It's never, my books are never going to be 600, 700, 800 pages. They never will.
Yeah.
It's just not my style. And it's part of that thing of, if I've got a bunch of stuff and it's over there, do you need to see it? Can I not have just told you in a paragraph and then we carry on with the story? It's, you know, and some people will show you all the things, which is why they get the giant books. I'm like, I'm not into that really all the time.
No, that's fair enough. And then you get some authors who, like J. Christoph, who don't explain everything, but they do footnotes. And again, that's divisive within readers. Some people like it, some people don't. I quite like it in some books.
Yeah, you can use it in different ways. Yeah, like so in The Coward, I did those little notes at the front, so bits about the story of what, because again, if I'd actually shown you all of that about what would happened in the past and then told the story in the present, it would have doubled the size of the book.
Yeah,
it just because I had to show you exactly what was going on instead of telling you. But also by telling you, I can be an unreliable narrator, and for part of the book is all about the unreliable of the, you know, what happened, what really happened. Whereas if I've shown you all, you know what happened. Whereas if I told you, did it happen that way or not?
Yeah,
and that's part of the twist of the book. So
that's pretty cool. So we've got a couple of questions about your research, because you've said that Judas Blossom was a lot. So first one, does research reading send you off down rabbit holes of additional reading and discovery when you're doing this?
Yeah. So an hour and a half to find out about travel, and whilst I was doing that, I found out about something else, and I thought, oh, I didn't realize that was like that. And then time whizzes by, and I'm there going, oh God, I've got to get some writing done, not just research. So I have to kind of be very careful not to do that and just fall down a rabbit hole and be just thinking, oh God, that'd be really cool. I could put that in, but I have to change the story. And like, no, keep writing the thing that you said you're going to do. Just do the thing, and then carry on. Do the thing you said you're going to do.
Another one, can confirm historical fiction takes a lot of research. Sometimes there isn't even a clear answer because we do not know. How do you deal with situations where archaeology, etc., does not know? That's actually quite interesting, especially for this time period, because I can imagine there's a lot that we just don't know.
No. So this isn't a spoiler. This is fact. This is part of what we know. One of the main characters in the book is based upon a real person. There's a note in the front of the book that says, one of the main characters is called Princess Kokachin. History tells us, and the books and like the travels of Marco Polo, she left Mongolia, Karakorum, to come to Persia to marry the Khan who ruled over that area. And Marco Polo escorted her, and the journey took 2 years. When she got there, the person she was supposed to marry was dead, and his son was now the Khan. So she married him instead, as you do. And according to history, that's what I do.
It's a long way to travel.
I've come all this way. I may as well marry him. Doesn't matter. And 3 years later, according to history, she died. And that's all we know. So there's a giant gap. Like, well, you know, who was she? What did she do? What happened to her? Did she die? And so where there are gaps in history or in archaeology or what we absolutely know as fact, that's where I can find interesting things to play. And historians will probably get upset about some of the things in the book, which, you know, that's fine. But I would stress that it is fiction. It's not a historic retelling. And it does have the word fantasy. It's historic fantasy. So, you know, any errors are mine, and my gaps in research is that I just don't know it. The research I found indicated one thing. It could be wrong.
Yeah.
So as long as it feels cohesive and it feels of the era, which is what I've tried to do, and it feels like it fits within the space, that's what I'm going for, as opposed to it being 100% historically accurate. Like one. So here's one thing we took out, actually. I had someone drinking coffee, and I got a note from the copy editor saying coffee wouldn't have come across from South America in that era to the Middle East. And they were right. However, when I went and spoke to someone else, they said, true, but you could have got coffee from Ethiopia and it would come across. And that's a possibility. And I thought, so you know, and it's a lot closer, Ethiopia, clearly, than, you know, South America, Brazil.
Yeah.
So I was like, I took it out and made it tea instead. And then you get into the whole thing of, oh, it was tea. And I'm like, I'm having tea. I'm just having the tea. I'm not doing the
Having
coffee.
something.
I weren't drinking a Starbucks latte coffee. It was just coffee. But,
Yeah.
you know, I changed it because I thought if that sticks out, like so if I read a fantasy book and someone says, okay, or yeah, it pulls me out the story. I can't. So I haven't got that kind of stuff in the book because it wouldn't fit with the era. And so I took the coffee out because I thought it's just going to make people raise their eyebrows, and I want them to be immersed in the world than going, really? Would that be real? So
I get that. Have you had to set any, not necessarily limits, but just give yourself like a template and be like, right, if I don't know something, I'm going to look it up. But to avoid, obviously, you've had your hour and a half looking at transport. But I can imagine that that's going to happen all the time. Like, have you got any way to kind of restrain yourself from going off down the rabbit hole? And just
I leave little notes for myself to kind of come back. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I write during certain periods of the day or the night, and so I'll say, leave a note, jump, write the next little bit, and then on an evening when I wasn't planning to write, I'll use that time to research instead. So I've still got my writing time to actually do writing. But otherwise, I'd just be spending months and months
researching.
I'm not behind on my deadline, but I'm not as far ahead as I would like to have been by this time on book 3, simply because of the research thing has slowed me down. But I'm still on par to finish, you know, before December, even with the slowdowns. But it's just, you know, we're nearly at the end of June. At this, you know, normally I'd be 20, 30K further on in the draft, I'd think. But so, that's the way to do it. It's just compromising my time and changing things around.
That's good. We've got someone who says hello from Hawaii.
Hello from Hawaii. That's fantastic. I think that's probably the furthest away at this point. Anybody can beat Hawaii? Anybody else can beat Hawaii? Let us know.
Yeah, let us know. They're 70% through Judas Blossom and loving it. That's exactly what
fantastic.
We here.
Thank you.
Do you end up doing brainstorming, plan the novel series out, or do you just write the novel straight out and decide to look at it again before pacing the first time?
I plan where I'm going. I don't brainstorm stuff. So with The Coward, I knew what the basic premise of the book was.
Yeah.
And then I started thinking about, you know, the themes that would connect to that. And then based upon that, I thought about, you know, I'm doing a modern twist on a quest. So there has to be a final destination to the quest. And then, you know, where does he start? And then you start planning all the milestones in between. I want, like, you know, action here, and then I have to go a bit quiet and rise and fall. So I plan those kind of things. And then when I go into like, well, what were they fighting then? That's when I'll start the brainstorming thing. So there's always some creative things in the process, but I never just sit down and start writing it. The pacing thing comes afterwards, really. In The Coward, the beginning was much longer, and when I give it to my agent, she said, yeah, I'm enjoying it, but it takes a while to get to this thing. Can we move? And so I had to kind of, is there a way to shorten that and make so I had to play around with that. So I rely on other people who I trust, whose opinion I trust now, to say, is the pacing okay? Or do we need another chapter from this person's point of view? Sometimes they've said, what was that person doing at this point? I'm not really sure. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay. And I've gone in and put another chapter in about them. So yeah, I do my best and I rely on other people to help me with pacing.
Fair enough. So that actually probably fits quite well into Lisa's question, which is what made you choose traditional over self-publishing? Was it that kind of professional opinion?
No, wasn't even that. So I'm very old. You won't realize this. I have lovely skin. When I started submitting novels, self-publishing was not really a thing. It was essentially vanity press, where you pay someone to print your book. And that's all they do. You'd have to pay someone else to do the editing, all the rest of it. There wasn't any Amazon KDP. There was barely an internet, remember?
No.
You'd have to submit. Well, you're too young. See what I mean?
Sorry.
She's too young. We just sat in the mud playing with sticks. That's what I did for us. And I was
when the streetlights came on, you had to be home. Like...
That was it. You know. You just so self-publishing was not really a thing. I went down the traditional publishing route because that's all I knew. It hadn't developed to what we had now. I'd send in submissions through the post. You couldn't do it through email. You couldn't do it online. You had to do a self-addressed envelope with the first 3 chapters, 5 chapters, send it
Wow.
off, and you'd wait 3 months, 6 months to reply, and then send it out to the next batch. So by the time self-publishing had grown up and the internet had grown up, I was very much invested in going down the traditional publishing route. I just wanted to do that because I read a lot of that stuff, and I wanted to be published by one of the big publishers, and I wanted to work with someone who knew what they were talking about as well, because you write in a bubble for so long.
Yeah.
It's a little bit easier now because you can hire people, but equally having someone with industry knowledge has been extremely useful, having my agent and my editors to talk to about what's going on. Nowadays, and I've got friends who are self-published, I've got friends who are hybrid. It's a very, very different space. I might self-publish some things in the future if I have time, but it's a case of having time, having the right project to do it. Like if I did some novels, and so like my friend Bradley Bowley has done Tale of the Shattered Sands. He's self-published novellas that kind of fit in the same world. Ryan McClellan has self-published some of his novellas that fit within his books, and he's published by Orbit. So it might be something I would do, something like that. It's just it wasn't really a thing, Lisa, compared to what it is now. So, and once I got my head in the sand to keep plowing on with this, I just kept plowing on with it, book after book after book, and you know, fitting it in around a full-time job. I couldn't have done it. I think self-publishing, it takes a lot more time.
A lot, because obviously they market themselves, they approached editors, and if, as we've seen, especially on Twitter, if anything goes wrong, especially now that AI is a big thing, that obviously sets you back, because things happen, people use things they shouldn't, and then that's a whole nother load of money to put out there, and I feel like
difficult.
it's very scary.
And also self-published authors are expected to produce books more often, usually.
Yes.
You know, I know some self-published people who do 2, 3, 4 books a year, and I'm like, I don't have the time to do that. No way. Plus everything else on top. So
no.
Yeah, and also you got to pay for everything as well yourself if you self-publish it.
Yes.
So there's the cost as well, cost and time.
Right. When did you last read book 1 in full? Do you have a good recall of details while working on book 3?
So the last time I read Judas Blossom in full was when I did the proofread, which is where they send me a copy of it electronically now as how it will look on the actual page. So, you know, numbers, my name at the top, the page numbers at the bottom, the full thing. It's like, this is pretty much how it's going to be when we send it to the printers. And at that stage, I go through and look for typing mistakes, spelling mistakes, punctuation. Those are the only things you can shift at that point. So that was the last time I read it, and that was earlier this year. And as soon as I'd finished reading 1, I then went straight in and did my own another edit on book 2. So that was fresh in my brain. Then I sent that off. And then I cracked on with 3. So normally I don't have all 3 in my head at the same time, but this is probably the closest I've had in quite a while.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. Do you have a favorite character
from this book or series? No, it's a Sophie's Choice thing again. You're asking me to choose between my children. I can't.
To be fair, I do think that each character does have something. I like that with the characters in this book, obviously a lot of the focus is war and people doing not particularly nice things to other people in the effort of taking over other parts of the country, which is what used to happen. But you can find good, or you see the aim for each character. And I don't think I have a favorite.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so
if I'm honest, I don't. No, I don't think I have a favorite. I have 2 that I really enjoy reading from.
Okay.
are we okay to say names?
Yeah, of course, yeah. I mentioned main characters,
which is it Temujin
Temujin,
and Kavion?
Kayvon.
They're my two favorite to read from.
Okay. Some people have said Kokochin. Some people have said Temujin to me.
Yeah,
no
I
one
do get
likes
Kokochin.
Galagu, but that's fine. You're not supposed to.
Well, no. If I had to rank them, he'd be at the bottom. But I do also like Kokochin, and I think that my feelings towards her as a character have got stronger as I've progressed throughout the book, purely for her arc development. But I'm obviously not going to say a lot.
No, there's
we don't want to spoil.
No spoilers.
But yeah, it's a good collection of characters, and I think, from my personal opinion, I think it does a really, really good job of showing the different parts of the world as they are, and showing what everyone's going through, because you can see it from one person's point of view, and it doesn't look hunky-dory at all, but it could look like one aspect, and then you go to someone else's point of view and you see like the background of how the soldiers are coping, or how people who aren't particularly happy with the new rule are coping, and what they're planning to do. And I think that's really, really good.
Thank you.
Shock horror, I'm fangirling over another Stephen book. When coming up with book titles, do you try for something unique that stands out in a search, or where does your title inspiration come from?
The only book title that hasn't changed in 9 books is the current series.
Really?
Yeah. So because it's that thing of
hero start as.
So originally it was a trilogy.
Yes.
And originally the first book was called The Coward's Heart.
Aye.
The second book was called The Coward's Throne, and potentially the third book would have been called The Coward's Legacy.
Right. Very different.
And the other ones were completely different. There again, they had the word mage in somewhere, but then it was like,
yes,
that's a theme. We're going to keep the theme going. And I was like, oh, okay. But it's that thing of, if you look through fantasy books, how many kings of rage, of quest for,
Throne
clash of, throne of, and I'm like, yeah, there's certain, like having someone on the cover with a hood is there's certain markers and phrases that people know for fantasy.
That's a fantasy book. I'm gonna read it
straight away. Like, oh yeah, okay. So finding a title that stands out, finding a title the publisher will look up. Obviously, if you've had something in the last few years that's the same in the same genre, you can't really have it. If it's a different genre, then you can. But the same time The Coward came out, about 9 months before, there's another book that came out called The Coward, completely different genre. Didn't know, and it's I don't even know what it's about, some sort of drama or something. But so it's that thing of finding something unique. The Judas Blossom is a thing from Persian poetry. So, and as far as I know, there hasn't been another book at all.
I would say it's very unique, and I like the colors as well. Like you said, there's markings that you see on, obviously this isn't the finished copy, but I think the colors are pretty similar. That is very eye-catching, where, like you said, a lot of,
I was quite particular on that, on the cover. So the color is very kind of the Persian blue, a lot of pottery, a lot of artwork. They do it. The kind of the mandala symbols, they use those in a lot of the artwork. There's the flames and the fire, there's the soldiers, and all of it is very much kind of to do with the part of the world, and the colors that do the part of the world stuff as well. The title is obviously tied into a Persian poet. The next 2 titles I've pitched for the rest of the trilogy, I think we're going with them, and I think they're going to stick. And they're again, I think they're fairly unique. So it's not going to be a clash of, a quest of, or whatever it might be. So it's one of these things where you put that into Google, and it should be about the only fantasy book that comes up, I think.
And will they all still be blue?
No.
Oh,
I've seen a working rough cover for book 2, and it's way too early for book 3. I need to kind of pitch ideas for colors and stuff for that. But watch this space.
Very, very exciting. So we have got loads of people commenting from our past conversations. Salty Stephen makes for a fun episode.
Yes, that's my YouTube channel. Every now and then I have a bit of a rant and I warn people, because some people watch my channel with their children. So now I kind of say, right, I'm going to be a bit salty now. If the kids are watching, send them in the other room. And I rant a bit and swear sometimes if I get annoyed about stuff. So,
there you go. If anyone needs an experience of Salty Stephen, check out the YouTube.
There you go.
Apparently,
yep.
That's where you get firsthand.
Sometimes
My TBR, my TBR
Mine's
is
TBR.
also ridiculous.
Some of it's behind me. Nope, there. Anyway, that way. That's some of it here. There's some of it behind me. There's some of it above you can't even see. Yeah, there's loads of my books. Just
boxes up here and books, and there's more books on this side, and
there's some here and there's some there, and yeah, I can't keep up. There are too many books coming out. He's right. Yeah,
there are too many books coming out. Can't keep up. How many books do you typically read a year?
20 if I'm lucky. 25 maybe. It really depends. A couple of months sometimes.
Yeah. We've got a lot on. And does reading someone else's book impact your writing? Yes
and no. So I know some fantasy authors can't read within the genre whilst they're writing because they say it feels too much like a busman's holiday. I usually read fantasy or sci-fi, a little bit of crime, a little bit of thriller. But I tend to read fantasy for pleasure, and I can turn the analytical part of my brain off. I never copy something and ever think, oh, that's great, I need to do this, need to do that. But if I'm reading a book that's really, really good, it makes me want to go and write. I'm like, oh, brilliant, this is so good. So I've got a bunch of Robin Hobbs that I'm slowly parceling out and reading carefully. When I sit down and read one of them, my style is so radically different to hers. You'd never confuse our books. But reading one of hers, I'm like, oh God, I love this so much. And then I'm like, right, get on. And I go and start writing. So it fires me up to start writing.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I have already said that. I said this to you before we went on the live. Getting box of your own books must be an amazing feeling. Do you still get the same thrill each time? Because there's a fair distance in time between each book
there's
release.
A stack of books here. There's a box here.
Stack of books here.
And books and books and copies and copies of books. I get as an author, you get a bunch of author copies early to give out, friends and family and stuff. But seeing my books.
You will read my book.
You'll read it and enjoy it and leave a good 5-star review. Just if it's the same surname, change it on it so they don't know it's your family. I love it. I just love I love walking into a random bookshop where I don't know my books will be and go to the fantasy section, because that's where I go anyway, into like a Waterstones, and I'm just kind of like, oh wait, that's mine. I look who I'm sat next to. Oh, Abercrombie, take that off the shelf, put it in the bottom.
Yeah, and you're right at the top as well, because
there's me, Abercrombie, and Ben Aronovich. We're all up there.
That's pretty big names.
Abercrombie's first, of course. So let's change my pen name to Aaron A. Aardvark. I'm always going to be slightly down the shelf from Abercrombie.
You can try.
Write sci-fi under that name or something,
Well, if we ever see an aardvark, we'll know it's you. What do you enjoy most about Tufty coming through with the questions? What do you enjoy the most about a new release? The pre-release hype, seeing folks showing pictures off on social, seeing the book in shops. I'm guessing all of them have a pretty good, like, fluffy feeling.
Yeah. The best feeling about a new release is seeing people enjoying it, but even better is when someone gets the thing you're trying to do with the book. So there's a very smart friend of mine once said with most books, not every book, with most books, there's the story and then there's what the book is about.
Right.
And when the person gets what the book is about, that is the best thing about a new release. I've had emails, I've had DMs, I've had tweets, someone saying, is this what I think this is, or is this thing? And I'm just like, yeah, well done. You got the thing. Where some people are like, oh, it's the guy going to kill some monsters and it's a quest book. I'm like, well done, you've read the back of the book, but that's not what it's about. And they're like, oh, yeah, okay. Some people just read books on the surface, and if they enjoy it, had a great adventure, great. If people get the thing you're doing with it beyond that, you can't control it, but if they get it, that's the most rewarding thing ever for me.
don't know. I like to think I get books.
Sometimes it takes a while. Sometimes I come away from a book and then go, oh, right.
You just sat there about to go to sleep, and then you go, oh my gosh, that book was this.
Always the way, just when you're kind of drifting off to sleep, all the things, they lock the front door. Oh, better go and check. You know, all the little things start trickling through your brain and like, oh, wait a minute. Mm-hmm.
Is that before or after you get the feeling that you're falling off a cliff?
Just before. Yeah, just before.
Right, okay. That makes sense.
Jerk yourself awake.
Oh, eureka! What book or author could you point to for a strong source of influence or inspiration? You've already said about Robin Hobb being quite, maybe not necessarily
a later influence for sure, but so early influences for me, and the biggest influence for me easily is David Gemmell. He's got like 35, 40 books. There's plenty there to chew on. James Barclay. Growing up, I read a lot of Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman, whether it was Dragonlance, whether it was Rose of the Prophet, whether it was Deathgate Cycle. They did a 7-book series, in a weird time that had magic, it had dragons, it had sci-fi stuff in. They jumped between worlds with portals. It blew my mind when I read it as a teenager. I'd never seen anything like it. Ursula Le Guin. Who else? C.S. Lewis, Tolkien. Lots of all of those things influenced me. David Eddings, Terry Brooks, the early stuff. A lot of those things all fed into the process of my early reading. That's where I'd start.
Do you have a word count goal for each of your books you write, so you know roughly where it will end?
Roughly, yes. I don't plan like every chapter down to like this one has to be 3,000, the next one's 3,000. I just kind of write what I feel for a chapter. Sometimes as the story goes on and it gets more involved or there's more happening, a chapter can get longer. But all of my books are somewhere within the 110 to 150 space, I'd say. Okay. 150,000 words. I think The Coward was a bit longer originally, and then the beginning was it took too long to get going, so I cut out a chunk, and then during the edits I added some more stuff back in, and it ended up about maybe 115, 120 for The Coward. I think the longest book I've ever written actually is Battle Mage, or the 6th book, the final book in the second trilogy of that wraps up the whole world. I think that's the longest book because I had to kind of type everything. Like in theory, I'm never coming back to this world again. I really have to tie up almost everything. So I think Mage Bane was my longest one. Yeah.
This is a 2-parter, I think.
Wow.
I've read some of your earlier books, including your first Battle Mage. In my own opinion, I've seen a marked improvement in both your prose and your storytelling.
Thanks.
Did you, and how did you, see yourself grow over the last 9 books, and what contributed to that growth? That's a really good question.
That is a good question. We'll put it on the list of good questions.
We'll put it on the list.
People tell me my books have got better with every book. I think it's down to, first of all, writing under a schedule and with deadlines helps, because I wrote a number of books before Battle Mage and Battle Mage in several years. And having the extra time is nice. But equally, if you have to do a thing, you get it with a book, you have to get it done. You do it, you get it done. Also, with working with people like my agent, like my editors, they're able to guide me in a certain way that I didn't have before, because I was writing books in the dark, and you send it out and you don't get any feedback. You don't know why the book didn't get picked up. So getting that constant feedback over the last 10 years of, you need to work on this, this isn't working, that's not working. It's going into my brain every time. And, someone saying, this is really good, that's not good. So I'm getting that every time. And every time I'm trying to improve anyway. So feedback, repetition, practice, like anything else. I'm not sure I prescribe to the Malcolm Gladwell thing of, 10,000 hours to get proficient at something. But I think the more you do anything, especially writing. It feels like a muscle. If I don't
Yeah.
write for a month, 2 months, when I come back, there is a kind of rust to me. I just struggle to get back into the rhythm. And I
Right.
think by keeping, you still have to take breaks to rest so that you don't burn yourself out.
Yeah.
But I think by keep writing and just keep doing it, you'll get better anyway. So yeah, that's what's contributed, I think.
I suppose also once you've done it for so long, you streamline the process that works best for you, because there's so many, especially nowadays with YouTube and everything and how-to guides everywhere, people will tell you how to do it, but only you know how it's best going to work for you. And that's probably a big thing as well.
Yes. Yeah. So as I said, I did that book by seat my pants, and it was not. But then again, RJ Barker, who's a friend, he writes books, he makes them up as he goes. He knows roughly what the kind of the idea is. He doesn't just start writing like Dean Koontz, but he couldn't plan it. He has to kind of just go and start going, but I couldn't do that. But I found a system that works for me. I found a technique that works for me. Keep doing it really.
That's the best way to do it. How frequently do you have to renew your publishing contract with, for example, Angry Robot? Do they sign you up for a trilogy and then take a view at your next work? Or is it like I'm guessing the rest of that question is, or is it a time period?
It's a contract by contract basis. So I signed up with Angry Robot for a 2-book deal. You'll see, so in places like the Bookseller and other places, and on Twitter now, people will post about the deals, and you'll see advert articles that say so-and-so's been signed up in a 3-book deal, and the first book comes out next year.
Yeah.
Once you get towards the end of that deal, like you're working on book 3, 1 and 2 are already out, the publisher will then know how well they've done, and based upon the sales and from working with you, they'll decide if they want to do any more with you in the future. So I've done a 3-book deal for Judas. I'm working on book 3 now. Once 1 has come out, and then maybe next year, I'll start having conversations with my agent and my editor about what next for 2026. So
so everyone go and buy the book.
Do that.
Go buy the book.
Yeah.
The Silver Tree of
Karakoram.
Thank you. Was described wonderfully in this book. In your opinion, was the building of this a sign of the beginning of the end of the Mongol Empire as they had grown too lavish?
That's a good question too. Put that on the list.
Is it one you're going to answer?
I will answer it, yes. Perhaps. As I said, I changed some of the stuff in the book. In the period that my book is actually set, 1260, the Mongol Empire had become so vast that it was no longer ruled by one person. And some historians believe that was actually the beginning of the end, because I think it was 80 years before Genghis Khan, some of the characters' grandfather, started creating the Mongol Empire, and he ruled everything, absolutely everything. There wasn't other people. But when it got to this stage, it got so big, they broke it into these 4 areas, and someone ruled each bit.
Right.
Which is fine in theory, because you're then looking after a smaller area, but each person has their own desires and wants and goals, and distances were a problem then. Communication, as fast as they were able to use it there with the horses and the techniques they had, it's still not like it is today. So if you send a message to someone in Persia from Mongolia saying, no, don't expand your borders, come and help us, 3 months later they get a reply. They're like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. What are they going to do? And then it takes another 3 months to reply. So I think it was actually starting to go down already then. I think that they had just grown too big, unlike so many other empires before them, whether the Romans or something else. They got so big they just couldn't control it. But yes, the Silver Tree is a real thing. It was this thing that where in the Mongolian capital, it's this huge thing. I think it's made by a Frenchman. I did the research and it's forgotten it now. There's this huge thing where silver tubes come up and come down, and that capture liquid and bowls, and if water and liquid flow out, so like wine would come out of one, and beer would come out of another one, and people just come up and fill themselves up, and it would constantly just be going like a water fountain, but with drinks. And it was made of silver and all kind of arty and crafty, and cost huge amount of money in the engineering, and it was real, and it was a real thing. So
would you be able to just quickly pronounce your characters' names to get the proper pronunciation?
I can, However, this is my pronunciation because some of them, there's 9 spellings I've found of one of the characters.
Right.
So I went with what I thought it should be. So there's
That's fine. It's your book. It's your
yeah,
rules.
it's not history. It's real. It's mine. It's all mine. So Kokachin, Princess Kokachin. You might see Kokachin, Kokachin. There's Temujin. Genghis Khan's real name was Temujin. So there's the thing in a book. It's a tiny spoiler. At one point, he says you were named after your great grandfather. You know, Temujin. There's Hulagu, but it could be Hulagu. And then there's Kayvon, which is a Persian boy's name. That's how it is pronounced, Kayvon.
Oh.
So there you go.
Yeah, I think that's one of the ones I've been saying wrong in my head.
That's
okay. I now know how to say it.
There you go.
The cover is stunning. Yes,
Thank you,
yes,
Lisa.
it is. Did the Broken Binding get in touch with you first to do the special editions, or do you chase them?
No, they got in touch with me and said they wanted to do one, and they spoke to the publisher, and then we talked about it and went back and forth and played around the covers and ideas and the sprayed edges and different designs. So yeah, they got in touch with me, and yes, in theory, I think it's next week I'll be going to sign them. So
take your camera.
Very soon. We will. We'll be taking pictures and we'll put them on socials. You'll see me like before I did the Karen and the Warrior, like a table just full of books in the warehouse. And I was just there, book 1 and then book 1,000. So
yeah, this is me before signing. This is me after signing. Feel like I need to binge Stephen's backlist.
So,
yes.
There are 2 trilogies that are set in the same world. There's also a prequel novella that's set before everything that feeds into Battle Mage. However, if you read it after Battle Mage, it also still makes sense because it gives you some inside info. So you can read it in either way because I published it after Battle Mage.
So it's a bit like the Fall and the of Blood and Ash.
So yes, so there's Of Gods and Men, and then Age of Darkness trilogy, then Age of Dread. That's all one world, and then the Coward and the Warrior is completely separate world, and then the Judas Blossom again is a separate world, brand new.
And then there'll be a future project. Do you ever get recognized in the street or in a bookshop?
No, not off. No, I've never been recognized unless I stand next to my own books and kind of point. But there aren't photos in the backs of books except for the hardbacks. So
yeah,
they used to have photos in the backs of all paperbacks, but they don't do it. It's not a thing. It's not really a thing now. So
yeah, because I've got like old paperbacks of Aragon and Eldest, and they've got a photo of Christopher. But then again, if I'm completely honest, if I saw him in the street, I probably wouldn't.
You'd be like, "Is that?"
Unless I've met you in person, I probably would.
You'd be like,
"Pick you up the lineup." Someone else needs to read your backlist. Do you have to ID yourself before shops let you sign books?
No, they know I'm coming. I don't just turn up and like. Oh, there's that story about Stephen King when he went on holiday to Australia and they thought he was a homeless man trying to sign scribbling books because he had a baseball cap on and his glasses and a bit of stubble, and they're like, "Get out of here!" And he's like, "Beg your pardon." Like,
my books.
"Oh, it is you. It's Stephen King." And he was just signing books whilst he was there. So,
who is this homeless man? Do you have access to a time machine? Would you desire to visit somewhere in the Judas Blossom?
Ooh.
I think it'd be interesting, but I don't think I'd want to stay.
No, I wouldn't stay. It's far too violent in a period of history for sure, with so many awful things happening. I've toned down in the book, believe it or not.
Turn them down?
I've toned them down. Yeah, and the people are like, "Oh, it's very violent." I'm like, that period of history was very, very turbulent. There was a lot of killing. I think I'd only visit for like a day somewhere safe, and then like leave really quickly. I'd go and do that research. That's what I'd do. Can I get from here to here? And ask someone in the street. Yes.
I don't know.
Then spy. Back in the time machine. And just go. That's all I want to know. That's it.
How would you do this? Right, I've also got some questions on Twitter, so I'm just going to hop over there quickly. Okay. Lisa also says, the vibes of this book seem very different to the Quest for Heroes books. How do you reset yourself and get ready to dive into a new world when switching from one series to the next?
That's a good question. Put that on the list, Lisa. I always want to do something different. I always want to, because it keeps me happy and stops me from getting bored. writing within the same world when I did my second trilogy was good because I didn't have to set up a whole bunch of stuff, but it was also a challenge because I've set up a whole bunch of stuff. So I can't be like, ooh, dragons. There are no dragons in this world. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
They just weren't local to that continent. This other continent has dragons.
Or you write yourself into a corner, like
Yeah.
Brandon Sanderson. There are 12 metals. There are only 12 metals. Oh, wait, I need another metal. There's a 13th metal that was undiscovered. That. Yes, let's do that. There's an idea.
Magic. It's fantasy. Why not?
So I like the challenge of starting something new because it's basically a blank page, but also it is very, very scary because it's a blank page. So I kind of, there's never a massive break between things. So at the moment, you know, I'm working on book 3 of Judas. I'm going to be editing 2 and 1's out. I'm already planning the next thing now. I was a year and a half, 2 years into planning Judas whilst working on The Coward and the Warrior. So it's in the background. There's always things kind of cooking. It's a bit of a refreshing thing because when I finally finished with the third Judas book, I put it down, and I'll do some edits or lighter edits, but I'm not doing a lot of heavy lifting. And that brain space, I can then write on the new thing. And I'm now focusing on the new thing. It's not you should be doing it. Well, I'm halfway through a draft. It's like, you can do it now. Ooh, and there's that excitement again of, I get to start over and something completely fresh. This is awesome. Right, let's go.
Yeah.
So it's that energy, I think, of starting something new is what keeps me going. And I love that creative burst at the beginning. It's just so much fun. It's so much fun. But yeah, that's a good question.
And then the other one from Twitter that I can't see duplicated on YouTube. How do you create your characters? Do you need to know them well before writing them, or do you learn about them as you write?
Bit of both. There's a bunch of characters in the book, in the Judas Blossom, that have code names, I'll say. You'll know who I'm talking about. There's a lot of them, and I've got little bits and pieces about them, certain key things about them, whereas and I don't need to know absolutely everything. There's certain things I need to know about them. For the main characters, I need to know a lot more. If they're based on someone real, I have to have done a bit of research. If they're made up, I've done my own research. I've written what they want, not just how they look. That's kind of irrelevant in some ways. It's what kind of a person are they? What drives them? What do they want? What do they need? What are their ambitions? What do they dream about? Who's their family? That dictates who they care about, how they fit into the world, what their jobs are, what their skills are. Then that fits into what they do. So it's all these kind of basic building blocks, and based upon that, their personality grows. But some of it comes in the moment as well. When you get them into a scene and you put them in a room with someone else, things happen, and you go, "Oh, I wasn't expecting that." So yeah, it's not one of these things where my characters speak to me. No, they don't. If you hear your characters speak to you, go and see the doctor. That's what I'm saying.
Life advice with Stephen.
My characters talk to me. What? Hello?
Does that then mean that when you finish a book, they haunt you because you're obviously God and creator, and if you're killing them off, like I would if you killed me off as one of the characters in your book, but why did you do that? That's just. I
still get grief from a member of family for killing off a favorite character. That's all I'm going to say.
In which series?
An earlier series. I still get grief now. They haunt me on the character's behalf. That's all I'll say.
Well, there you go. Well, you do get a box of books, and you do make people read them. So
they get a free book.
Is it kind of on you?
I think it's fair. They get a free book. I can't complain.
You get feedback.
Not always helpful, but yes.
This I think is our final question because there are only a few on Twitter. So final question, because we're now over an hour, and I'm sure as much as you love talking to me, you have got other plans today. Do you sometimes dream about your characters or interact with your characters in your dreams?
I don't interact with my characters myself. That's a little bit too much like my characters speaking to me. I will run through dialogue sometimes, like that there again, when your brain goes quiet and you're not doing anything else. Or if I'm doing something that just requires concentration. Like if I'm going for a walk, I'm riding my bike, or I'm on a rowing machine, or whatever it is, I'm not really using a lot of my brain, and I'll run through things in my head, like bits of dialogue, and think, yeah, I'm still not quite happy with that, or maybe I could tweak that there, or that thing needs work. So that's probably as close as I get to kind of daydreaming on things, of like, that needs a tweak, you know.
And do you pull those pondering faces while you're running and rowing? Like,
That's why I do it in private. Yes, when no one's watching me.
What is that man thinking about?
What's with his face? Why is he running like that?
I don't know. Maybe
strange man.
Strange man.
Very tall.
You should just turn around and go, I'm talking to
I'm
my
a writer.
character.
And my characters are talking to me. It's my muse, my art.
They're talking to me. That I think they might call the people with the vans to come
and
get you.
Have you escaped from the hospital, sir? Do you need to go back to your nice comfy room?
That's why I'm running so fast. Why isn't this
away
moving?
What do you think I'm running away from? Right, we have to pick a question. Who had the best question?
Right, so you had the lovely one about the tree. Lisa's one about how do you reset. What was the other one?
There was Stephen's one about
Stephen's one.
And Tufty, I think, had one as well.
Tufty asked about, was it this one from Tufty? The one about your title inspiration?
Yeah. I think Lisa's question about resetting between series, I think that's a really good question. So
there you go.
That's
well
most
done.
Interesting. So well done, Lisa. I will sign and personalize and send you a copy of Judas Blossom. That's right here. One of the many,
One of the many.
Come on Twitter, DM me, send me your address details, and I will send you a copy in the next couple of days. There you go.
There you go. So I hope everyone has enjoyed this interview. I certainly have. Thank you, Stephen, for taking time out of your very busy schedule to come and talk to me. Maybe I will make you come and talk to me. There you go. Lisa's happy.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll make you come and talk to me for the second one as well.
Okay, yeah. So 11th of July, it is out. Be able to pre-order now. If you are in the UK, you can get signed and personalized copies of the paperback. And the Broken Binding special will go on sale, I think it's like July 2nd. So very, very soon. Let's keep an eye out.
And where can people find you?
I'm all over Twitter. I'm on Instagram-ish. I'm on YouTube. Look for my own channel. I've got writing advice channel there, and I do interviews with other authors talking about writing and how they got into the business, self-pubbed and traditionally published authors too. And yeah, Facebook. No, I've got an author page, but I've just posted info on there. But yeah, Twitter, my website, and Instagram, I think, are the best places, and YouTube. Yeah.
Perfect.
Cool.
So thank you everyone for coming to join us on this very warm evening. Thank you, Stephen. Have a lovely evening all, and I'll see you soon in my next video, and go check out all of Stephen's many socials. See you later. Bye.